Hunt 'em Big with Steve Bartylla. Brought to you by
One of the biggest challenges there is to successfully hunting blinds, and it doesn't matter if we're talking elevated redneck 360s, it doesn't matter if we're talking bale blinds or the ghillie blinds. In any one of those scenarios, one of the biggest challenges is simply getting in and out of those blinds. The more we are busted doing that alone, the more we are training these deer to try to avoid these areas. Never forget, deer are no different than your dog at home. Every single time we are kicking up deer, we are training them through positive and, or in this case, negative reinforcement. When you don't kick them up, when they're able to feed right in front of your blind without a care in the world, that's positive reinforcement. When you kick them up, when they wind you, all that good stuff, that's negative. They only can be kicked in the butt so many times before they decide, you know what, I'm going to avoid that. And here's the challenge. It's not just you. It's not just those hunting your property. It's your neighbors as well. Your neighbors are training deer too. When they're sloppily hunting their blinds, when they're sitting there crawling out of that blind in front of a sea of eyes of deer, you know what? They're hurting you almost every bit as much because they are associating danger with those specific objects. Here's how you avoid it, along with blending them in and all the other stuff I talk about. That is, really think about how you're going to get in and get out of these blinds. And that has something to do with setting. When you set them, if you set them in the middle of a field, guess what? You're not going to be able to get out of that without an assist. By an assist, I mean somebody coming out to drive out there to bump the deer off with a vehicle, which is much better than them watching you climb down. Heck, another hunter walking into that field and kicking out the deer that way is much better than them watching you walk down. Another thing you can do is, if you're surrounded like that by deer, happen to have a water bottle, for example. Give that water bottle a little toss, and right before it hits the ground, snort at the darn things. Howl at them, do something to spook them off, but do not, I repeat, do not crawl out of your blinds in front of deer. That is literally training them to be afraid of blinds. If you can get away with it, rather than set it out in the middle of that field, set it along the edge and orient it so when you're crawling out, you're crawling into the woods rather than out into the food plot, out into the field, out into something like that. As I said, seriously think about how are you going to get into this and how are you going to get out. Very rarely is getting in and out the exact same route. On an afternoon hunt, I'll often walk the edge of a field, the edge of a food plot to crawl into a stand, into a ground blind, into a ghillie blind, into a redneck 360. But you know what? If I'm going to have deer out in front of me or out in that field, that food source, I can't walk out that same way. So find a back doorway through the woods to slip out. Possibly there's a nice little ditch you can take advantage of. Maybe an old creek. But think about how you're going to get in and out of those blinds, because that is a very important part for future success. You do not want to do anything to associate danger with the blinds you have on your property. You can't control what the neighbors are doing. But what you can do is you can tuck those blinds in just a little bit. You can blend them just a little bit, and you can make sure that you aren't crawling in and out in front of a sea of eyes, because that is literally training those whitetails to avoid that situation.
Final thoughts, brought to you by Huntworth.
Blinds are incredibly effective tools. The whole catch is to use them to their peak efficiencies. Take the steps to go ahead and maximize their efficiency and make sure you're not getting busted going in while hunting and going out of those ground blinds. When you're getting pegged off, crawling in and out of blinds, you are literally training deer to avoid this area.